Welcome back again to Biology 23, Infectious Disease. We're going to be looking at Chapter 15 this time, looking at the immune response to all of these microbes that we learned about previously. The immune system is in fact quite a challenge to study because so many of the components that we're going to be talking about work together and are interconnected. However, we'll have to start by discussing them individually to better tackle this complex subject. The function of the immune system is to recognize and destroy molecules that are considered foreign to the body. Foreign molecules can be invading microbes and their toxins and enzymes. But foreign can also end up being cells on the body that have become not normal, such as if they're cancerous or viral infected. Functionally, the immune system consists of two different components: innate defenses, which include the defense components such as the skin and mucous membranes, as well as some cellular components, some of our white blood cells, and adaptive immunity. Adaptive immunity takes time to develop, but then provides long-lasting and highly specific targeted therapy and defense against foreign molecules and microbes. These specific molecules that are targeted as foreign by the adaptive immune system are referred to as antigens. I always tell my students they can remember that it's antigens that come from the pathogen. And these antigens are recognized by molecules of our immune system, referred to as antibodies. Antibodies come from our body. We're going to be talking about different components of the immune system. These different components in general are listed here. However, it is important to keep in mind that there are many attributes that differentiate between the different responses of individuals to foreign invaders. These can include age, sex, race, nutrition, and health status, along with physical and mental stress. All of these things can play a significant role in the immune function. The immune system is beneficial for the most part, but there is another side of the coin. Sometimes the immune system goes into overdrive, leading to harm. There are two different versions of these. One of these is a hypersensitivity reaction known as allergies. Many people suffer from allergies, which is when the immune responds to foreign molecules that are non-toxic and are not harmful at all. This includes things like flower pollen, dust, some foods, insects, antibiotics, and other things. Allergies can run the gamut from being a nuisance, just sneezing, watery eyes, and runny nose, to life-threatening anaphylactic shock. Anaphylaxis occurs when the body releases an overwhelming amount of the molecule known as histamine in response to an allergen. The histamine causes blood vessels to dilate, which lowers blood pressure and severely constricts bronchioles in the lungs, making breathing very difficult. An allergy can develop at any time. However, if continual exposure to an allergen occurs, the allergy can become worse and worse. Another example of when the immune system goes into overdrive and becomes too potent for its own good is the autoimmune disease. Autoimmune diseases are when the immune system fails to distinguish between non-foreign or self cells and foreign, otherwise known as non-self cells. In this case, the immune system ends up attacking the body's own cells as though they were foreign, sometimes destroying them outright. Some examples of autoimmune diseases include rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, and some anemias. Celiac disease is also an autoimmune disease. How does the body determine what is foreign? Well, cells of the immune system, specifically the innate immune system, rely on what's referred to as pathogen-associated molecular patterns, or PAMPs, to identify and respond to infections. PAMPs are components that microbes have but human cells do not, and are thus a direct way for the innate immune components to identify a microbe as foreign and respond accordingly. Examples of PAMPs include cell wall components of bacteria or fungi, flagella of bacteria, and certain carbohydrate structures like lipopolysaccharides. Cells of the innate immune system, most notably many white blood cells or leukocytes, have pattern recognition receptors, PRRs, that recognize PAMPs from the microbes. The leukocytes or white blood cells important in innate immunity include phagocytic cells, such as macrophages, neutrophils, and dendritic cells. These can engulf microbes, surrounding the microbe with their own cytoplasm. Natural killer cells are cells of the innate immune system that can identify stressed or infected cells and destroy them. Innate immunity plays an important role in initiating the adaptive immune response by alerting the cells involved in adaptive immunity, which can then examine the microbial remains as they prepare to respond. So, innate defenses require the body to be able to recognize very commonly associated molecules found generally in many different types of microbes that are not found in the human body. The adaptive immune system relies on a completely different strategy. The adaptive immune system uses a different cell type called leukocytes. These are T cells and B cells, otherwise known as T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes. The lymphocytes have receptors called antibodies. These are proteins that are generated and form a far greater assortment of molecular components than what we find in the innate immune system. Your body can generate hundreds of millions of different types of antibodies, all of which bind different types of microbial molecules. Any microbial molecule that an antibody can bind is referred to as an antigen. Each person has lots and lots of different types of lymphocytes. But while there are many different types of lymphocytes, there's only a small assortment of each different type. However, when an antigen enters the body, the lymphocytes that are able to respond to that specific antigen will grow and divide, leading to the adaptive immune response for that particular antigen. This causes those particular microbes to be destroyed and your adaptive immune system to generate lots of cells that can kill that specific microbe. However, this does take some time, usually a week or two, for full immune activity. On the other hand, the innate immune system is ready to go right from the start and doesn't change over the course of an infection. Due to the vast array of potential lymphocyte receptors, or antibodies, during early development, lymphocytes go through a selection process to make sure they're not reactive to molecules of the body itself. During the selection process, any self-reactive lymphocytes are eliminated from the body. This all happens while you're a fetus. This is to get rid of any lymphocytes that may end up attacking your own body cells. However, sometimes self-reactive lymphocytes do slip through, and this is what can lead to autoimmunity. When we take a look at the blood, there are lots of different types of cells in the blood. There are erythrocytes that you can see here. These are your red blood cells. And these erythrocytes, or red blood cells, carry oxygen to the body's tissues. There are also white blood cells, and you can see that there are many different types. Now, when looked at under a microscope in an unstained specimen, these white blood cells really are white, but it makes it really difficult to see them when they have no color. So instead, most smears that you would see under a microscope, either in pictures online, in your textbook, or in real life, these smears actually are stained with chemical dyes. And as such, the white blood cells come out looking purple or bluish or sometimes red. The white blood cells are the cells of the immune system, and that's what we're going to be spending most of our time talking about in this chapter. Finally, there are platelets. Platelets are thrombocytes, and these are cell fragments, so they're much smaller than the red blood cells and white blood cells that we can see. Now, the white blood cells that are in our bodies are divided into different categories based on morphology. Neutrophils, basophils, and eosinophils are referred to as granulocytes. That's because when viewed under the microscope, they have little granules, or what looks like polka dots. Lymphocytes and monocytes are two other types of white blood cells, and these are agranulocytes because they don't have these visible little polka dots or granules when viewed in a stained specimen under a microscope. Of these different types of lymphocytes, there are three different kinds: B cells and T cells, as well as natural killer cells. The B cells and T cells are the only cells of the white blood cell contingent that are involved in adaptive immunity. All the other cells listed in this chart that we are going to go over are part of the innate defense mechanisms. Now, the innate defense mechanisms include phagocytes like monocytes and neutrophils. And remember, these phagocytes are involved in engulfing microbes, surrounding the microbes with the cytoplasm, and then destroying them. The eosinophils and basophils we'll be talking about in a moment work in slightly different ways. Another thing I'd like to point out to you here is that neutrophils are a vast majority of the leukocytes or white blood cells in the body. The second most common leukocyte are the lymphocytes. These are your B cells and T cells. Natural killer cells are in fact a very, very small portion of the lymphocytes in the blood. Basophils, you can see, are also really rare. Let's take a look at these different white blood cells a little bit more closely. The B cells are responsible for forming antibodies, those molecules that we've been talking about as part of the adaptive immune response that recognize specific antigens from pathogens. T cells have lots of varying function, and we'll be talking about those later. As I mentioned, monocytes and neutrophils both are phagocytes, but a little bit of new information is that these monocytes can end up forming two different cell types. One of these is known as macrophages, the other one dendritic cells. They differ in their shape, but their function is generally the same. Eosinophils are an interesting type of white blood cell. They defend against helminths, or those worms. Those are single cells that are able to attack a multicellular organism within our own body. They do this by releasing molecules into the environment that are toxic to the helminth and attack them that way. Eosinophils also have a role in allergies and asthma responses. Finally, basophils, a very rare type of white blood cell, is known to generate histamine and thus is also involved heavily in allergic responses. However, their other activities remain to be discovered.